Hey everybody, it's the Professor, and once again, it's the one and only Blue Pill Professor, coming at you from the internet and talking to you about the things we really care about, namely, the nature of women, and what we are all going to do about it now that we have awoken from our long slumber.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true. Wanted a woman, never bargained for you. Lots of people talking, few of them know. Soul of a woman was created below.
And this week, on the question of whether a woman's soul was created below, we turn to the great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who had a fair amount of things to say on this question. Let me read you some quotes. This last, and when he's saying this last, he's talking about lying. The last is more of a woman's thing. The idealization of love practiced by women is fundamentally and originally an invention of their shrewdness, inasmuch as it enhances their power and makes them seem even more desirable in the eyes of men. And he continues, women. One half of mankind is weak, typically sick, changeable, inconstant. Woman needs strength in order to cleave it. She needs a religion of weakness that glorifies being weak, loving and being humble as divine, or better, she makes the strong weak. She rules when she succeeds in defeating the strong. And woman has always conspired with the types of decadence, the priests against the powerful, the strong. A woman brings her children to the cult of piety, pity, and love. Yes, she represents altruism convincingly. And there you have it, out of the mouth of one of the great philosophers of the 19th century, and into the ears of Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin. And today, as promised, we will begin with The Married Man's Sex Life Primer by Athol K. May peace be upon him. I am just going to give you the highlights of this book. I highly, highly recommend that you buy at least 2 copies, one for your Kindle and one a hard copy to highlight and underline. So I'm doing this unscripted as I do all my podcasts, and I've got my copy of MMSL, and I will simply go through the notes that I took roughly about 2 years ago the first time I read it. And again, as last time, I want to make clear that this is not going to be a substitute for reading this book and studying it, for applying it to your own personal situation, thinking about it, and figuring out what you're going to do in your own situation to solve your issues. But I think what I can do is spark a little interest and give you a brief overview of the highlights of the book. So we'll jump right in. He starts out this with an introduction, basically secretly talking to the women, because he changed this book and modified it quite a bit in order to appeal to women. And he starts out revealing quite a number of truths. And the first being that men got married in order to lock down the pussy. He says it a little bit more diplomatically than that because, again, the book is geared towards women. But no matter what you thought about your wife, the number one consideration when getting married was, I get to screw her. And nothing else really matters. So now we're many years later, and you're not having sex like you used to. In fact, you're not having sex very much at all. And all of a sudden, that whole marriage deal doesn't look quite so good. Well, this book, guys, is about how to reverse that and how to make it a better deal and how to get your wife to want to have sex with you. And that is the bottom line. He continues on and points out about power in relationships. If your wife is the hotter one in the relationship, then she's the one in charge of the relationship, and she does not respect you as a man. So if you've allowed her to gain charge of the relationship, she doesn't respect you, and a woman's sexual desire is cued in and tied in closely to her level of respect for the man. So what you've done, guys, is you've made yourself unattractive by letting her take charge of the relationship. And by making yourself unattractive, you make your wife less likely to want to have sex with you. So that's the hard truth. And here's another hard truth. Your wife does not control what she's attracted to, and neither do you. But you can control what you do that is attractive to her. So while you can't control what's attractive to you, you can control what's attractive to other people. And women know this. That's why they wear corsets. That's why they do their hair. That's why they wear slutty uniforms when they go out to pick up dick. Women know perfectly well what attracts men, probably because we're pretty open about it. We like a hip-to-waist ratio of about 0.7%, the 70 to 30 hip-to-waist ratio. You know, that's the hourglass look. Men like it. They like nice boobs. They like an attractive, clear skin, etc., etc. We know the drill. Well, the secret is, what do women like? Well, women like muscles. They like an attractive, in-shape, six-pack bearing, good-looking guy. That's no secret, and that's why we tell you, get to the gym, work out, get in shape, lose your disgusting gut, and be the prize. Any man, no matter how out of shape you are, can get in shape in about 6 months, and he can look a lot better than he does now. And that's true true of you. That's true of any guy out there listening. But what women are actually and really, truly attracted to, all the way down to their little vaginas, is, as we've said many times before on this podcast series, a dominant, strong, masculine, in-charge man. So this book points the way towards how to achieve that in the context of a marriage. Then he launches into this long description of body agenda, which actually does explain quite a few things. Why do men want to have sex every 3 days? Because the sperm inside your wife's vagina is dead or dripped out after 3 days. And if any sperm finds its way into your wife's vagina after that, the baby she has will not be yours. This is an example of the male body agenda. We do not have control over this response. And in the same way, a woman does not have control over her sexual response when she comes upon an alpha man, as I say, an in-charge, cool, masculine dude. And this ties into the female body agenda because a woman has a natural response to submit to a man who approaches her with cool confidence. Her body agenda over millions of years of evolution told her that was the best way to stay alive. And don't forget, guys, we aren't civilized men with this thin veneer of barbarism covering it. No, we are barbarians with a very thin veneer of civilization covering it. In addition to being the best way to survive in antiquity, until quite recently actually, a woman's submission also triggers the male sexual response, which ensured that this woman would have babies very soon. And that is the ultimate purpose of the body agenda. Your body agenda is in favor of whatever is good for making babies. So why is the hip ratio attractive to men? Because that shape is the best shape for delivering babies. Why are confident, strong men sexually attracted to women? Because those men are the best situated to protect and raise the babies that they have. And they're also the best situated to provide the best genes to have a large, strong baby. So again, body agenda is extremely important. Then he launches into the alpha-beta dichotomy, and I have an entire podcast devoted to that topic. He touches on secondary selection and pre-selection bias. That is that women want what other women want. So if you want your wife to want you, you need to be wanted by other women than your wife. And he does a very good job defining the various alpha traits, which I, of course, have listed many times. He talks about sexual rank and talks about a sort of attachment, which is to say, if you're a hot body 10, you're probably going to marry a hot body 10. And if you're a hot body 7, HB 7, you're probably going to marry a 7. That's called assortive mating. He covers DHVs, displays of high value and displays of low value. And finally, on page 65, he actually identifies the reason why your wife is not having sex with you. And I don't want to shock you, but here it is. The reason your wife is rejecting you sexually is that she is less attracted to you, and she has simply calibrated her sexual response to you downward. So Athol K's solution is to MAP. M-A-P, the Man Action Plan. Develop a plan to become more masculine, more alpha, more all those good things that are attractive, and less all those bad things that are unattractive. And his strategy is to trump her sex rank. In other words, if you're a 6 and she's a 6 or she's a 7, then the goal is to raise your sexual market value, SMV, up to as high or higher than hers, because that's the only way you can get her to have sex with you. And a wife who doesn't want to have sex with a sexy husband who is a good man is not going to be pleased by anything you do. And no manner of answering shit tests is going to solve your problem. As Athol K puts it, the husband's torment will last as long as the marriage. He also spends some time talking about the fact that sex twice a month for a man is slow torture. It is deliberate torture and it is punishment. Except she doesn't know why she's punishing you, but now you know. So an essential part of your MAP or Man Action Plan is to pursue it to the end. And there's going to be an end. It's either going to end in endless misery, it's going to end in you cheating, in divorce, or hopefully it's going to end with her deciding that her husband is actually sexually attractive after all, and an actual real marriage, many of you for the first time in your life. He covers the importance of following these steps of the MAP, the Man Action Plan, in a continuous fashion and not skip ahead, because if you don't raise your sexual market value at least equal or above hers before you begin making ultimatums, then it is checkmate and you lose. If a guy who's a hot body 6 is married to a hot body 7 and he does nothing to improve himself and starts making demands and offers the divorce option, she's likely to laugh at him and accept the divorce. So he advocates the MAP, a gradual slide into a sexier marriage, which he points out is the inverse of what happened in your marriage in most cases. The gradual slide into a sexless marriage is exactly the same principles as the MAP, just in reverse. There's usually no ultimatum given, but instead the sex just tapers off to nothing, or most likely 2 times a month, over the next 2 years. And as you become more unattractive, a vicious circle forms and the sex continues. continues to taper off. And as Alpha K puts it, the goal is to stop chasing and pursuing and make it clear that by your actions, that you are no longer going to be held as her emotional hostage. And if that doesn't hit you right between the eyes, I don't know what will. A woman denying sex to her husband is keeping him as an emotional hostage. And again, you don't go leveling accusations at your wife. She is not doing this consciously, most likely. She is simply reacting to her body agenda. And you can change her reaction to you by changing your value. And that's where you need to start. Not changing her. Not saying, oh, we're not having sex. And then, first of all, that's hugely unattractive. And second of all, it's not going to change her body agenda. You have to change you, because her reaction is purely biological. It's a mammal mother attempting to secure the best deal for her offspring. So if you're a beta guy, the solution is most likely to become more alpha. And if you're too alpha, well, you're probably not going to be listening to this podcast. But just assuming the imaginary alpha who's listening to this podcast, well, he in a angry or low sex marriage probably needs to up the beta a little bit and be more caring and loving, etc. But again, it's very unlikely a guy like that is going to be looking on the internet for ways to improve the sex in his marriage. We've all heard of the woman who hangs with the jerk, the abusive man who beats the crap out of her. Well, studies have shown there's a reason why she stays with him. And it's because when you're in an abusive relationship like that, the one thing you don't have is boring sex. So the bottom line is that's part of what we're trying to do here, guys. We're trying to increase the sex in the relationship by you becoming less docile. We don't want you to gravitate into the abusive range. It's not necessary. But once again, we do suggest that you move a little bit in that direction. Just a little bit. Kay then moves into the long topic of wife seduction, which I covered on a previous podcast, and then talks about the captain first officer model, which I've also already covered. And of course, the concept of shit tests, which he describes as the woman's equivalent of a sonar ping to determine social status. Since people of low social status defer to people of high social status, if you defer to your wife in a shit test, then you have demonstrated low social status. And his section on shit tests is very good. It's worth it getting the book just for that. So he completes the first half of the book, and we're at 49%, with this humorous depiction of the donkey and Princess Fiona from the movie Shrek. And it's worth considering. Is your wife the donkey? That is, does she shit test you all the time? Is she rude, disrespectful, and denies sex? Or is she the Princess Fiona, deserving of the princess treatment? That is she having sex with you regularly? Is she sweet, submissive, and kind? You need to consider that and treat your wife accordingly. And next week we'll begin with chapter 13, 49% of the way through the Kindle version of the chapter on sexual judo. And that music means my time is up, so as always, I leave you with the words and wisdom of the incomparable Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin.
But now's the time to look and look again at what you see. Is that the way it ought to stay?